So what are some of the policies of the new, if the new right takes over the conservative movement, or
I mean, they want to destroy the conservatives are the enemy.
Yeah. Right, so whatever that is, though, whether they burn the thing down or whether they infiltrate it or whatever, the people that care about these ideas broadly that you're talking about, what does it actually look like politically? Like, what are the things that they would be fighting for politically?
So this is what's hilarious, is you have a group who's united only by their opposition to progressivism. What do you want to do? They have no even close to unanimity. Some want a military junta, like just martial law.
Yeah.
Some, like me.
Not for me.
Not for me.
Okay.
No, thank you.
All right, good.
Some want complete liberty, meaning anarchy. Some want a restriction of the right to vote. Some want to accelerate. They want more leftism because they think if you accelerate and amplify, the system is going to collapse because of the inherent contradictions in leftism. So you have no consensus whatsoever about what the next steps. And same thing with, like, for example, people think, oh, everyone in this group likes Trump. Some of them loathe Trump completely and unabashedly. Ann Coulter, who I talk about in this book, she's come out very hard against him, and I think she called him a moron or something like that.
What do you make of her related to Trump? It was like she was huge pro-Trump, but then he's not building the wall fast enough for her, or a couple of the other things. It's like,
so Coulter used
there's also some real politic involved here.
Yeah, Coulter used to be a real troll, right? She knew how to say the exact right things to upset people. Now she's gotten much more serious and ideological in her later books. It's interesting to see her relationship with Trump. I mean, she said at one point she thought America was like 90% no chance. Now it's maybe 40% because of Trump's election. She's very...
Wait, 90% no chance what?
That America's done. We're done. She thought it was like, we're over, 90% chance. Then she was like, okay, maybe it's 40% that we're done because Trump got elected.
I gotcha.
I can't really speak for her, but she is a very kind of interesting character, and I discuss her ideas at length because her book, Adios America, was probably the most influential book of the 2016 election cycle. That's the book where Trump got the idea of they're sending the rapists.
Who do you find you can debate with on the other side of this? So I get you can be around people on the right that you disagree on a lot of these different things, and you don't come out of the racist camp and all that stuff. Do you find that there are some good actors on the left that you can engage with?
Oh, a lot. People like Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy, Jimmy Dore. I actually don't debate because I'm not interested in persuasion. I'm just there to have fun. And I think debating is often a waste of time. It's always a waste of time. I mean, the cost benefits. So I don't really. I've had a few people on my show who are, pretty far left. Nomiki Konst was on. I also like debating with conservatives because I really disagree with them. And since I'm coming at them from this,
what's your line on that? Conservatism
is progressivism driving the speed limit. So one of the things I discuss in this book is National Review, my favorite paleontology magazine. In the late '90s, they had this editorial comparing the fight for gay rights to a theoretical fight for necrophilia, and saying, what's the difference between fighting for two men to have sex with each other as opposed to having sex with a corpse? And it was just a very disturbing article, but now the conservative case for gay marriage. So what principles are there that would have you say that then and have you say this now? So it's disturbing then, and the hypocrisy is disturbing to this day as well.
So you care more about the hypocrisy of it, not you don't care about gay marriage.
Well, I mean, I care about both. I mean, if you're going to have a principle, I would have more respect for someone to be like, gay marriage is wrong because of the Bible, blah, 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 and stick to that, as opposed to, I'm anti-gay then because I'm a phony, and now I'm anti-gay now because I'm a phony. You're bringing nothing to the table.
Yeah, but I mean, you specifically, you don't care.
I do. What do you mean I don't care? I'm glad that you're married.
No, that's what I meant. I mean, you don't care. I mean, care in a negative sense.
Oh, of course. No, yeah, no, absolutely. Please, marry whatever you want.
Yeah. Marry a corpse.
Well, no. Well,
so you do have limits.
Only if they're good looking.
Only if they're good looking, then you can marry a corpse.
Yeah.
How crazy do you think things are going to get as we roll into 2020? Because I think we're still...
As crazy as possible, hopefully. And here's something that I've called that once I say it, no one can really kind of deny it. Historically, the president or the nominee hasn't really engaged with the other party's primary process. For the first time in history, a sitting president is going to be live tweeting the debates and the primary of the other team. And not only that, it's not like he's going to comment like, oh, I disagree with his economic plan. He's lobbing nukes in his Trumpian style, and none of these 23 candidates are going to know what to do, and none of their advisors, who are getting paid a lot of money, social media experts, are going to know what to do. There's no blueprint. And the question becomes, is it a badge of honor that Trump is clowning me? Does that make me the strong candidate? Do I ignore him? Am I above the fray, like historically people used to do, like, oh, my opponent, that kind of stuff? So this is going to be absolutely hilarious.
And you want that hilarity.
The more chaos, the better politically. Yeah, I don't want people to be able to get together and impose their will.
So what, if you were one of the 23, what would you do? As someone that knows how to play the trolling game, that knows how to, throw the bombs back, let's say, what would you do? If Trump, so you're on stage, Trump's, doing his Twitter thing, you get off stage, you see what's going on, what would you do? Or what would you if you were an advisor to one of these people, what would you do?
Well,
I know you don't want to give away all your tips
I would resign. I would never advise any people. But in all seriousness, what I would do is, if you look at when he was a Comedy Central roast, and they asked him beforehand, they said, what jokes can you make and can't you make? The only thing he wasn't comfortable being joked about was that he's not as rich as he claims he is. So since that's his line, I would hit him with that line as much as possible. But at the same time, it's hard to troll someone who is that, Hiroshima in a china shop. I mean, but I don't know, Justin Amash got him pretty good, I think, over the weekend with coming out in favor of impeachment. I think that really ruffled his feathers.
What would on the...
Oh, no, you know what it is? This is what I would hit him with. I would say, you bragged during the campaign that you would hire the best and smartest people. How come all these people are resigning? And hit him with that, his big core competency, alleged core competency.
How competent do you think he is or isn't? Actually, forgetting the tactic, the trolling tactic and Twitter aside.
Competent as being president?
Competent as being president.
It's hard to tell because I have that theory that probably isn't that crazy that when you become president, they sit you down. They're like, all right, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. The fact that Obama was droning everyone all the time, it seems like it's out of his, peacenik background, or it could be that, he was a closet, hawk at the whole time. We don't know. I don't think any of us really know what it's like to be president. The fact that he hasn't gotten a lot of his big promises through is kind of a big deal. The fact that he has taken on unprecedented opposition and his head is still, being held high and his approval ratings are still relatively high, I mean, that's a bit of an accomplishment.
So since you wrote a book on North Korea, and there's been a little, I think last time I had you on, maybe they were in the beginnings of some of those discussions. Where are we at with North Korea right now?
So North Korea has this secret weapon, which causes everyone on Earth to have amnesia. And what happens is North Korea goes through these cycles as night follows day, which is there'll be warmongers, we're going to nuke America, we're going to kill everyone, blah, blah, and then 6 months later, we want peace, please work with us, please work with us. And they've just gone back to the war cycle, and everyone's like, oh my God, we've never heard this before. North Korea had sentenced President Trump to death. They were threatening to nuke Guam and Alaska, and even previously that they were threatening to nuke Austin. So this is how this is their song.
Wouldn't be terrible.
Oh, come on, no. So this is where they are right now. I am very hopeful. The thing I'm very happy with President Trump is that North Korea is now on the front pages, because we need to engage with this most evil country. And I was on Fox and Friends first a while ago, and they said, what is your big concern with the summit? And I said, the continuing enslavement of the North Korean people. So that whenever you're looking at this issue, always ask, in my view, what does this mean for these 20 million hostages who are being kept enslaved by this evil government that starved its population on purpose during the 90s and killed 1 to 2 million people? That is not funny.
Yeah. So do you think that Trump is sort of the perfect person for this? That as North Korea vacillates back and forth with all this rhetoric, that Trump can actually match them at that, and that might be the thing that kind of allows a détente? I
don't know about perfect, but you have to have hope for these people. Especially, I mean, not to sound whatever, once you've been there and you've seen people there, everyone I met in North Korea is still there. Like every single person I saw on the street, every kid, every grandma, and it messes with their head because this is what, 2012. Think how much your life has changed since 2012. Think how much mine has. And none of theirs has. I still see my guide, pictures of her on Instagram, and she's still trapped. And she's like a millionaire there, but she's still trapped in that prison with those gilded bars. So it's very disturbing.
How does an anarchist care about foreign policy?
Well, because since the government's the enemy, this is the most evil government on earth. It's a pretty easy syllogism.
Interesting. You don't really think about that, though. I mean, generally, when people think of a more libertarian view of the world, it's like, no, just let everybody do whatever the hell they want.
Well, I'm not going to let the government do whatever the hell they want to these people. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing. Like, we have it so...
Even though it's not your government.
These are human beings. And being born in the Soviet Union, being Jewish, these were two chances my family could have been sent to a concentration camp. So the fact that we have concentration camps right now, that you could see them on Google Earth, in high school we always talk about how the Holocaust happened, Something similar happened in the 90s in North Korea against its own population. So this is something that maybe other people don't care, but for me, it's kind of like there but for the grace of God go I. And when I met the guy that I had, she had the same haircut my mom had in like 1982, which is like cutting edge for North Korea. But it's just looking at like a sliding doors thing, and it's like, holy crap, I could have been born here, and instead of sitting here in my Willy Wonka costume, who knows what would have happened to me.
What do you think is going to happen to the traditional conservatives?
Oh, God.
Is it absolutely over because they can't withstand what's coming on both sides at this point?
I don't see how they come back, because they didn't bring that much to the table to begin with, as opposed to like socking to the left, and now Trump is socking to the left more than anyone else has. I'm going to be talking to Ben Domenech not that long from the Federalist, and I'm very curious to hear his take on this book and this thesis, because
he's someone that is more of a traditional
he's
conservative.
A hardcore, pure conservative.
Yeah.
Mutual respect. I like him a lot. But I don't see how they regain this party, especially because one of the big issues with conservatism and maybe republicanism is young people. Young people are going to be drawn to humor and edginess and memes, and they're not going to be drawn to kind of like, hey, remember Reagan? Reagan's great, he ended the Cold War, but this is not going to be a selling point for your movement. And also, I think young people are also drawn to aggression and kind of flipping over tables, and that's what the new right does offer them.
Are there political leaders outside of however much Trump is involved in this? Are there some other people that you like? I know that's the weird thing. It's like you don't want a political leader per se, because you don't want
me personally, who I like?
Yeah, or that you think can sort of grab some of these pieces and do something good in your estimation.
I'm sure there are. Tulsi Gabbard I like. Anyone who brings more of the anti-war message.
It's funny, you wrote a book called The New Right, and you're picking a candidate who's running as a Democrat.
Sure.
Anti-war Democrat, but it's interesting.
I would love it if there was a complete consensus in Washington that war is a last resort and an absolute nightmare. That is my goal. So just like we agree that slavery is a non-starter, sure, I'll get the argument that maybe we have to go to war, but the fact that we can be so glib about it and be like, oh yeah, we're just going to... Here's another example.
Do you think that we've crossed a little bit of a threshold when it comes to war? I mean, I feel like the mistakes of Iraq, and nobody knows why the hell we're in Afghanistan still. Trump is not beating war drums. There's stuff about... There's always this over-the-top rhetoric related to Iran. But I don't sense this is a guy that wants to just... I think he's actually very against all of these nation-building...
The bloodlust of the establishment, which I include the corporate press, cannot be overstated. When 2016, Trump's the nominee, we heard it every single day. He's crazy. He's going to give us to World War III. He's going to get pissed off at a tweet from China and press the nuclear button. Remember, we heard this all the time. Carly Fiorina got asked this in the second debate. The first question, do you trust President Trump with his finger on the nuclear button? And now... China has hacked our systems. Russia has, tried to interfere with our elections, and the press is constantly saying, "Do something about it. Do something about it. Do something about it. Do something about Venezuela." So the fact that he's not getting us into World War III is now being used as a slight against him by the same people who regarded that as a problem when he was a nominee. It's horrific, and this has been a long time coming. We talk about yellow journalism in high school. Remember the Spanish-American War, and then they pretend it went away. It didn't go away. The same press wants, if it bleeds, it leads. They can't wait to get us into another engagement. It's disgraceful.
What has to happen with the press then? And I mean this in terms of cable news, mainstream news, network news. I mean this Vox, HuffPo,
sure. The battle is
BuzzFeed, all of it.
The battle is won when the average corporate journalist is regarded with the exact same way as the average tobacco executive. They have a job. They're promoting their product. Their product is cancerous and deadly. They're often bright people. They're often good people. But be aware of what it is that they're selling you.
So how do we find some people to trust in the mix of all this, in this big mess?
Trust but verify. I mean, I'll use the Reagan. I mean, trust is, I'm not interested in trusting people. I'm interested in trusting ideas and creating mechanisms that people can't enforce their will, so trust won't be necessary. Like, I don't need to trust, like eBay, right? I don't need to trust that other guy is going to be honorable because they're different systems. I can get my money refunded, so on and so forth. So there's no reason for me to have a political leader to trust because systemically he's going to betray me at some point or another.
God, there's a lot here, Malice.
Thank you.
Take me somewhere else altogether.
What do you mean?
Where else do you want to go in this conversation right now?
Well,
I got a million things rattling here.
I want to talk. Here's what you're a humorist.
Yeah.
Doesn't it bother you? One of the things I defend in this book is dark humor. And let's tie it back to North Korea.
Yeah.
I knew a refugee, and he said. So when people say that's not funny, right? It's this Puritanism. H.L. Mencken said Puritanism is the idea that someone somewhere is happy, right? Mm-hmm. I knew this refugee, North Korean refugee, and he went to high school here, and he's talking to his friends, and they go, "Hey, remember when we were kids we had Pokemon?" And he goes, "Yeah, except instead of Pokemon, I watched my dad starve to death." Now, are you going to tell him that's not appropriate?
Right.
Do you know what it's like to watch?
His coping mechanism.
Yeah. Do you know what it's like to watch someone hungry, starve to death, and it's your own dad? We can never wrap our heads around this. So for you to tell him that kind of joke is not appropriate, how dare you? Bonnie McFarlane, a great comedian, was roasting Jim Norton, and she said, "Your show is so unlistenable, I'd rather hear my daughter drown." Now, that's very dark, but are you telling me she doesn't love her daughter? Are you telling me she doesn't know how to tell a joke? So the metaphor I use when people say a certain subject is not appropriate for humor, I say it's like flour, F-L-O-U-R. Is flour a food? Well, no one eats flour, but everyone eats it when it's processed and baked, right? Mm-hmm. So same thing with jokes. The darker the subject, the harder it is to make it palatable. And I have examples of, they made me cut one joke, but I have examples of all sorts of, subjects that are supposed to be off limits. And maybe you personally don't find it funny. If someone's been assaulted and they're like, these kind of jokes set me off, that's fair. But the idea that no one should find that funny is not fair.
Well, it's also stealing something that's very human, is that we use humor.
Yes.
Comedy is tragedy plus time. We use humor to be able to look back on the past. I mean, if Mel Brooks couldn't have made fun of Hitler, couldn't have made fun of the Holocaust, that was actually healing, I'm sure for him personally, but for millions of other people.
But the establishment, which gets by on legitimacy and quality conversation, it cannot abide that court jester laughing at them.
Do you think that's why they took out the AOC parody account on Twitter? Because it was really freaking good.
They took out a lot of parody accounts, and it's
strange. All those Trump parody accounts are still up.
And Saturday Night Live, which is their right, and they're great. Do it. You should be making fun of the president.
Wait, you're not saying Saturday Night Live is great, are you?
Why not? Sure.
It's pretty crappy.
I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't watched it in 15 years, but every time I see a 10-second clip, it's like,
it's basically as good as the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka movie. So that's a callback, my friend.
Yeah, I understood it was a callback. It's just the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Someone who I love your outside-the-box thinking, and yet it's bizarre.
The point is, humor is it's a Jewish thing. It's this Jewish thing of laughing and keep from crying, and it's a very waspy thing. It's like, you don't make the kind of jokes at the dinner table, and just because something isn't for someone doesn't mean it's not for no one. Mm-hmm. And one of the elements of the evangelical left is the idea of universalism. Everything has to be inclusive. Everything has to be for everyone. And my answer is no. Not everything has to be for everyone, and that's okay. Not everyone is welcome in my house. Not everyone's going to enjoy this book. And you know what? If you don't think I'm interesting or funny or smart, I wish you nothing but goodwill. This is a big world. Go live your best life.
Do you think that it doesn't make sense, or does it deeply, that they're obsessed with our differences? They're obsessed with our skin color differences and our sexuality and our gender differences. I mean, that is the entire thrust of everything that they're giving us. And yet they're also the ones that want us to be exactly the same. Is that a feature or a bug, actually?
I don't know if it's a feature or a bug. It certainly works for them to some extent, because what kind of evangelical progressivism gives people is a sense of certainty, and it also gives them a sense of being saved, right? So once I recognize the pervasiveness of racism, I've kind of been initiated into the mysteries of this faith, and therefore, since I'm inherently good now, I'm in a position to condemn heretics and sinners, and if necessary, wipe them off the face of the earth. So they want us to be the same in terms of being saved, but they don't want us to be necessarily saved in terms of a literalness.
I don't know that I've ever heard you talk about this specifically, but how much of what do you think is going on with the evangelical left, as you just described them, is just a disconnect from faith?
Oh, I think it's a degeneration of the social gospel. So if I trace this, so conservatives, when I talk to them, they're like, oh, they admit that the left controls culture and media and Hollywood and things like that. And you say, well, how did this happen? And they're like, we have to have our own version. I go, how did this happen? They're like, oh, it used to be. I'm like, when? When it was the 1930s, when literal communists were running Hollywood,
Right.
when Woodrow Wilson is playing Birth of a Nation at the White House, FDR has so many Democrats that they have to sit on the Republican side of the seats in Congress. It makes no sense. Other than
So you're saying it's not that they lost control, they never had control.
correct.
Yeah.
It's always been, and there's a reason, because leftism lends itself to innovation and creativity, because one of the aspects of leftism is liking what's new, liking what's innovative. This is a psychological thing, and there's nothing wrong with being conservative saying, I don't like new stuff, I like things the same. That's fine for you, but that's going to be a huge disadvantage when you're trying to attract people who are artistically minded, because they're going to be drawn to those who are maybe not overly openly minded.
Right, because it sounds good. I'm for progress.
Right.
Everyone's for progress, but it depends what you're progressing to.
Correct,
This
right.
is the rub.
So how conservatives, the left controls culture and built it is one of the big themes of this book. And it's, I think, filling in a big hole on the right, because conservatives really don't know. And here's another example of conservatives. You remember, I'm sure, back in the 90s, Jon Stewart, or the 2000s, excuse me, was running the show. And the answer was, let's have a conservative daily show. That's not creativity. That's just mirroring what someone else has built, as opposed to people like, I would say, like Rush Limbaugh and Roger Ailes. Rush Limbaugh invented basically talk radio, made it what it was. Roger Ailes was told, we want you to compete with CNN. He goes, no, 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 no. I'm going to destroy CNN. And CNN was all news, and he made it this news, entertainment, opinion thing, and then CNN followed suit. So those are two examples of the right actually creating something kind of sui generis.
You think we ever get to something that feels a little more stable again than
I
what
don't
we're
think
at right now?
I think stability politically means oppression. And I think the stability of, like, let's suppose the 50s, and this is one thing I'm hopeful with social media, there were entire schools of thought that were made invisible because they were threatening to the social order. And now they have to pick people off one by one instead of entire schools of thought. And that is progress in a good way.
What if you were picked off?
I'm too charming. And no, I mean, I could be glib.
No, I mean,
it
you have
would
to-
suck. It would suck. I mean,
what would you do? I mean, because I think
don't
that's
know.
what a lot of people are thinking. It's like, we've seen enough of the names that we've mentioned throughout this
Sure.
that get picked off and get suspended and get banned. It's not that they're our best buddies or anything, but everyone's sort of in the same sort of circles at
Yeah.
some level.
Again, coming from that Soviet background, I know that idea of, like, it could be you tomorrow. It's not. It's always at random, because that way you keep everyone scared. At the
Can you
lowest cost.
dive into that a little bit more?
Sure. So
Yeah.
one of the techniques that the Soviets did is it wouldn't be like the worst people who would get picked off. Like Beria said, find me the man, I'll find you the crime. So Stalin, and I do not think we're in a Stalinist society. I'm just using this as a metaphor, a very loose metaphor. I just really want that to be clear, because we got a ways to go before that. But the principle to keep a population kind of submissive is, it's not always the loudmouth. You pick the housewife or you pick this grandma, and then everyone knows you could be next. So you only got to take out like 3 people, and that 100 are going to basically fall in line. And because Twitter's rules are ambiguous, and it's seemingly at random, and they don't even give warning. They could have sat down that AOC account and said, these 3 tweets are offensive, delete them.
Yeah.
Fair. So
even though he did nothing wrong by the rules that they supposedly put out there. I mean, he labeled it a parody account. That's the main thing.
Sure.
And many people have more than one account.
And also, if you want to have this kind of public square, political conversation, once someone is a certain level of stature, who are, kind of an influencer, it might be that Jack has to talk to them personally, or there has to be 3 checks before they're banned, or you could have warnings. I mean, there's a lot of systems for keeping people who are part of this thriving conversation in place, but that's not what they want, and that's their right. But this is something that people should recognize.
So you would say that the tech companies basically want to keep us all in semi-darkness all the time, because that's the easiest way to...
I don't know if it's easy, but it seems to be effective for them in terms of, because then you have self-censorship, right? Because, I had this tweet, I don't even remember what it was, and I was scared to put it up because I'm like, any moment that Eye of Sauron can fall on me, and I'm booted.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know this feeling very well, especially with your YouTube stuff.
Yeah. No, I know it extremely well. And it's like, if I'm even remotely close to where the cliff is, man, things have shifted in a seriously dangerous way. I mean, look, there will be a certain amount of people that don't want me talking to you. There are a certain amount of people that didn't want me talking to Cernovich, et cetera, et cetera. And I have to figure out who I think it's okay to talk to.
And I talk about that in the book. How is it okay for Barbara Walters to sit down with, like, Gaddafi, who murdered so many people, Diane Sawyer with Charles Manson? I mean, with a swastika on his forehead.
You're telling me that Diane Sawyer didn't endorse all the views of Charles Manson?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be what they say about, if I sit down with someone, I must endorse all their views.
Or it's amazing when they're like, oh, he follows this person on Twitter. It's like, everyone follows the president. I mean, does that mean you endorse it? Like when CNN plays his video, his speech, does that mean they're endorsing it? So it's a very weird situation. But again, because they're legitimate, you're unorthodox, so you're not legitimate. You don't have the same rights, in a sense, that they do.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it right before we started, but you saw the way Media Matters went after me because I was going to have Mayor Pete on,
right.
And immediately
they went after him, though.
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing.
Not you.
Yeah. Well, can you take that away?
I mean, you know exactly how it works. Like they can't, like when Donald Trump Jr. Took a tweet of mine and put it on Instagram, and for days I was fending people off.
Yeah.
Basically, it was like, well, they can't get at Trump, so they're going to get at me. So if they can't, you don't give a crap about Media Matters, I'm sure, but they can sure get to Pete because they'll have his ear, and it worked apparently.
And I mean, think how sad and depressing that is. Forget Mayor Pete coming in here and doing the show. It's actually irrelevant. I would like to have talked to the guy, but that strikes me as irrelevant. It's more that either he or his handlers are willing to bow to the mob. That his people basically agree to do an interview, and then because Media Matters, HuffPo, and Vox, which the latter two are supposed to be places of journalism, they are leveraging or trying to influence a political candidate from talking to somebody.
But Dave, the only reason a mayor of an Indiana town is in the running for the presidency is because of HuffPo, Media Matters, and Vox. The idea this is a platform for even Senate beggars belief. So of course he's going to kowtow to the people who put him in the position he is. This guy's no natural constituency. He's like 37 years old.
We got a big battle ahead of us.
Yeah. And the important thing is to have fun and enjoy life because we're still free and we're still blessed in this country. And this is one of the things I do disagree with many pockets, and you're right. These people think America's ruined, we're destroyed, there's no hope. And it makes me very, very sad because you go online and you find more creative people doing awesome things than you can count.
Yeah, and we definitely seemingly we focus on the negative more. But that is one of the things that when I see you on Twitter, I'm like, you are actually having fun with this.
Oh, yes.
And there is a need. This endless politicization?
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, of everything. It's making people crazy and depressed.
One of the things I really hate about the left, and a certain kind of the left, is the idea that the personal is the political. And to me, if I disagree with someone politically, that this would have any ramification on our friendship is so profoundly disturbing. I can't even begin. Like, if God forbid some of my family dies, and I have to look at my phone and be like, well, I can't call this person because they're a Bernie person. What kind of human being
am I?
what
a twisted place.
What a twisted place. And even people who are like regular Christians don't think in these terms. Like I have good friends. I'm staying with a couple. They're solid Christians. If something happened to my family, one of theirs, I mean, you're Jewish, this would never even enter their heads, not even in a million years. But it's like, oh, you're a Trump voter, you're a Hillary voter, I can't, whatever with you. This is very, very tribal and disturbing to me.
Have you figured out any ways to deprogram some of these people?
Yes, humor. I think once you encourage people to see the absurdity of their position, and also you tell them you can let go. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be so ideological all the time. Life is wonderful. Enjoy your life, and you shouldn't be depressed. Let's suppose Mike Pence. If you're gay and Mike Pence is president, that might suck for you. But come on, go to WeHo, go to Hamburger Mary's, have fun. I mean, this is not really a reflection of your life because there will always be a president that you hate. So focus as much as you can, and this isn't a particularly shocking message, on living your life to the fullest.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
I don't need to ask you anything else. That's it. I think let's get people, regardless of where the politics fall on any of this, it's like let's get people to realize it's still pretty good and don't get too caught up in all the lunacy.
And just when I'm trolling someone, just retweet it and sit back and laugh. Don't spoil my trolls.
Where do you get this jacket?
I Oompa Loompa made it.
Follow the Willy Wonka of politics, Michael Malice, on the Twitter @Michael Malice.